My name is Nora Reyes. I find fraud for a living. On a Tuesday in March, I opened my banking app and found a zero where $180,000 used to be. 48 hours later, a man I had met exactly twice set a folder on my kitchen table, told me he was worth $700 million, and asked me to marry him. I said no. This is the story of why that was the smartest thing I have ever done. The coffee went cold, which is how I know I remember it. Right. I never let coffee go cold. It was 8:14 on a Tuesday morning in March. I was at the kitchen island with my laptop open and a browser tab that had been open for 3 years. The listing was a cabin on Beaver Lake, 1,100 square feet, a wood stove, a dock that needed rebuilding. Grant and I had talked about it the way people talk about children they haven't decided to have yet. Someday, when things settle. That morning, I was going to stop talking about it. I want to be precise about the money, because everyone else in this story eventually got imprecise. $180,000. 8 years of bonuses. Not gifts, not inheritance. The kind you earn staying late in February while other people go home. Every March, I moved that check into the same brokerage account and did not touch it. 26 deposits. I could have recited them by date. The account was in my name, only my name. Not because I was hiding anything. I opened it 4 years before I met him, and there had never been a reason to change it. I typed my credentials. The dashboard is loaded. 0, not low, not pending, 0, in the same gray font as every other number I had ever seen. My first thought was not betrayal. My first thought was outage. A server in Omaha having a bad morning. That is what 8 years of professional habit does. It puts a layer of boring explanations between you and the truth. And most of the time that layer is correct. I clicked into the transaction history. One outgoing wire, $180,000. Executed at 11:47 the previous night, while I slept upstairs with my phone charging 18 inches from my head. Initiated with my username, authorized with my password, confirmed with a one-time code sent to a device that was not mine. Here is what the Holloway family would spend the next 7 months getting wrong. That was not a marital dispute. A husband draining a joint account is ugly, and it is legal, and it gets sorted out later by a judge dividing furniture. This was a man using another person's credentials to move another person's money. That has a name. It is not a name from family court. I did not cry. I also did not feel brave. I felt the specific floating numbness of watching a number you built with your own life turn into a different number. Then I heard the garage door. Grant came in through the mudroom, keys in his teeth, coat half off, phone against his shoulder. He was 40 minutes late for a showing. He saw my face, he saw the laptop, and I watched him decide, in real time, in about a second and a half, not to lie. I have thought about that second and a half more than anything else. He had a lie available. He sold buildings for a living. He was good at lies. He chose not to use one. He set the keys down. You saw it? I saw it. Okay, he exhaled. And this is the part I cannot fully explain. He sounded relieved, like a man who had carried something up a hill and finally set it down. Good. I've been trying to figure out how to say it for a month. Where is my money, Grant? It's safe. That is not what I asked. He looked at the ceiling, then at me. And he said it gently, which was worse than shouting. I'm going to be a father, Nora. The refrigerator hummed. Down the street, a school bus braked. Kendall's due in November. He shifted his weight. You can't put a spreadsheet in a crib. I understood then that he had rehearsed it. That line had been polished somewhere. in a car, in a shower, out loud. He had built a sentence designed to make 8 years of my discipline sound like a personality defect, and he had waited for a morning to deliver it. I did not answer him. I picked up my phone. Not to call anyone, I opened the banking app, went back to the transaction history, and started taking screenshots. Timestamp, wire reference number, originating IP field, the device ID on the authorization. I scrolled and captured. My hands were shaking. I remember watching them shake and being distantly annoyed, the way you are annoyed at a bad connection. 11 screenshots. Grant stood in his own kitchen and watched, and never asked what I was doing, because he had already decided what I was. He thought I was falling apart. I was making an exhibit list. He wasn't finished. That is the thing about a man who rehearses. He rehearses the whole speech, and he needs you to sit through all of it. He hung his coat on a chair, which meant he was staying. "There's more," he said. "You should hear it from me and not from the mail." "Then say it." "I need you out of the house. 48 hours. He said it the way you quote a delivery window. "Thursday morning. I've already talked to my attorney." I looked around the kitchen I had paid 70% of the down payment on. "My name is on the deed. Grant." "It was?" He almost smiled. "I refinanced in February. Pulled 400,000 out." I said nothing. So he filled the silence because that is what he had always done. "Cash out refi. The equity was sitting there doing nothing. You're the one who says idle capital is dead capital. You can't refinance without both signatures. Notarized." "Right." Now he smiled. "Dale did it. Dale Brennan, 61 years old, sold Grant his first commercial policy, played the back nine with him every other Saturday, notarized things out of a strip mall insurance office with a plastic ficus in the corner. Dale notarized my signature," I said. "Dale notarized your signature." And there it was, sitting in my kitchen at 8:31 in the morning with the coffee going cold. I want to explain what happened in my chest, because it was not rage. It was the opposite. It was the feeling of a locked door swinging open. Forgery is not a divorce tactic. Forgery is a claim that can be disproved by an airline, because I knew where I had been in February. The signing date was the 12th. On the 12th, I was in Denver, on the 4th floor of a Marriott, at a 2-day conference on claims integrity. I had a boarding pass in my email. I had a hotel folio with a check-in timestamp. I had a photograph of myself at a name badge table, taken by a woman from Hartford whose name I never learned, time-stamped and geotagged, sitting in my cloud storage where it had been quietly waiting for 11 weeks. I did not tell him any of that. I have thought about why, and the honest answer is this. For 8 years, I had corrected him, restaurants, directions. The year his sister got married. I had built a marriage on being the one who caught things. That morning, for the first time, I understood that catching something out loud is how you lose it. So I said, "Okay." He blinked. He had been braced for a fight. He had probably rehearsed that too. "Okay, okay." He picked up his keys. He got all the way to the mudroom door before he turned around, because he could not leave without collecting. "You know what's funny," he said. "You spent 8 years learning to spot liars. You just never checked the one sleeping next to you." The door closed. The garage motor ran. The house went very quiet. I sat there for a while. Then I went to work, not out of strength, because the alternative was the floor. The day passes the way. Days pass when you are trying not to feel one. At 11 that night, I sat down at my desk and did 3 things. In order, first, I backed up. Everything. The 11 screenshots, 4 years of statements, the closing file from when we bought the house, our joint returns, the shared drive he had never bothered to lock, onto an external drive the size of a deck of cards. Then I copied it again, onto a second drive, because 1 copy is a hope and 2 copies are a record. Second, I preserved the alibi, boarding pass, folio, the badge photograph. I exported the original files with their metadata intact instead of screenshotting them, because a screenshot proves nothing and a file proves everything. Third, at 11:04 p.m. I called Margaret Sung. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding like a woman who had been asleep for exactly 20 minutes and had made her peace with it. I told her all of it in 4 minutes, without adjectives. She was quiet for a while, then paper shifted on her end. Legally, nobody can put you out. Your name is on the deed. Stay and you win in 8 months, $60,000 in fees, and his face across the kitchen every morning. She let that sit. Or you walk out tonight and let him believe he won. A man who thinks he's already won stops covering his tracks. I looked at the 2 small drives on my desk, side by side under the lamp, 4 seconds. I'm leaving tonight. I checked into a hotel off the interstate at 1 in the morning with a duffel bag and 2 hard drives. I came back Wednesday at 10 to pack the rest. I still had until Thursday. Grant had given me a deadline, and I had decided to honor it, which he would later mistake for obedience. Their cars were already in my driveway. Diane's Lexus, and behind it Warren's truck with the tailgate down and a stack of flattened cardboard in the bed. I let myself in through my own front door and listened to my mother-in-law direct traffic in my living room. Bethany, the shelves first. Warren, if you'd stop admiring the crown molding. Grant had given them a key. That is the part I keep returning to. Not the boxes, the key. He had handed my house to his mother, the way you hand someone a receipt. Diane saw me and did not flinch. She was wearing a scarf indoors. Oh, good. You're here. We're helping. I didn't ask for help. Well, she smiled. It goes faster this way. I took my phone out of my coat pocket and tapped it twice. 2 years earlier, after a run of package thefts on our street, I had installed a camera system in this house. 4 cameras. I chose them, mounted them, and paid the subscription out of my own account every month. Grant had never once opened it. Diane did not know it existed. I turned the audio on and set the phone face down on the counter. Then I went to the sink and poured myself a glass of water and stood with my back to the room because people tell you more when they cannot see your face. Warren, I said to the window, did you know about the money? That's between Grant and his wife. A pause. His first wife. And the house. Grant's got a good head for leverage. He said it with pride. He was running his hand along the banister. I had refinished myself over 2 weekends in August. $180,000, I said, still facing the glass. Out of an account with only my name on it. Nobody in this room thinks that's a problem. That was the question I wanted. Not for me, for the file. Diane crossed the room. I could hear the specific sound her heels made on the floor I had chosen. Consider it severance, dear. Her voice was warm, which is the thing people never believe when I describe it. She was not shouting. She sounded almost kind. 8 years of my son's life is worth more than $180,000. I said nothing. I turned the tap on and rinsed a glass that was already clean. It was Bethany who went furthest, and I understood why even then. She was 31 and she had spent her whole life proving which side of that family she belonged to. And there is no cruelty like the cruelty of someone auditioning. You were never home, Nora. She was wrapping a vase in a newspaper, not looking up. Kendall actually wants him. I let it land. I did not answer. She moved to the bookshelves and started taking down the framed photographs, dropping them into a box lined with a dish towel, the way you do a job you have decided not to think about. Then she stopped. It was a small frame, the cheap kind, black plastic. In it, two women sit on a bench under hospital lighting at 4 in the morning. One of them is Bethany. 4 years ago, she lost a pregnancy at 19 weeks, and her mother was in Scottsdale, and her brother did not pick up, and I drove 90 minutes and sat with her until the sun came up. And someone from the night staff took a picture neither of us asked for. Bethany looked at it for about half a second. Then she turned it face down on the shelf and left it there and moved on to the next one. She did not put it in the box. Nobody said anything. I did not either. I want to be honest that I almost did. I finished my water, I rinsed the glass and set it in the rack. Then I picked up my phone, put on my coat, and walked out of that house at 10:41 on a Wednesday morning while 3 people boxed up my life behind me. I did not take a single carton. In my purse was an encrypted drive that weighed 180 grams. She counted boxes. It never occurred to her to count data. For 8 years, that was the difference between that family and me. They only valued what could be carried. Desmond Pryor called me Thursday at 7:40 in the morning. From a parking lot, I could hear wind across the microphone and a car door closing behind him. How was Bethany's husband? In 8 years, I had sat across from him at perhaps 15 family dinners, a tall, quiet man in his mid-30s who wore reading glasses at the table and let his wife's family talk over him. I had always liked him and never known him. Nora, it's Desmond. Do you have 4 minutes? I have 4 minutes. I'm a fraud examiner. I found something in Grant's paperwork this morning, and I have a professional obligation to report it. No preamble, no apology. I'm calling you first, not so you can hide anything, but because you're the victim and you deserve to know before the government does. I sat down on the edge of the bed in a furnished apartment I had leased with a kitchenette and a view of a parking structure. Say it. The refinance isn't the whole picture. It's the smallest thing in the file. A pause. Someone else is going to contact you today. Take the call. Then he hung up. He did not ask me to keep his name out of anything. That was the first indication I'd been wrong about that family for 8 years, not wrong about all of them. Just wrong about the count. Everett Lang knocked on my door at 6 that evening. I had met him exactly twice, both times at holiday parties. Kendall's husband, a pleasant, unremarkable man in a jacket that fit him badly, who had stood near the coat rack and left early. He did not look unremarkable in my doorway. Ms. Reyes, I'd like 11 minutes. If you want me gone after that, I'll go. I let him in. He set a folder on my kitchen table and did not sit down. Open it. I opened it. I had spent 8 years reading documents built to look like other documents, and it took me under a minute to see the shape of this one. Vendor invoices, 19 of them, to a consulting entity registered in Delaware, billing for advisory services against a scope of work that did not exist, approved through a credentialing profile that should have been deactivated when its holder resigned. $2.4 million. Kendall's old access, I said. Never revoked. My controller's failure, and he no longer works for me. Everett stayed standing. The invoices were drafted by someone with a real estate vocabulary. Your husband wrote them. He used the word repositioning 6 times. Whose company is it? Mine. I looked up. Not on paper, he said. On paper, it's a holding entity 3 layers down. My wife believes I'm a mid-level operations manager. She believes I make $180,000 a year. $180,000. I did not say anything about that. I just noticed it. The way you notice a number appearing twice in a dataset that has no business repeating. They stole from a company they thought had no owner, I said. They stole from a company they thought had no attention. How long have you known? And this is the part I want to be exact about, because most people assume the worst here, and the worst would have been simpler. I didn't let them steal. I caught it in week 2. He put his hands in his pockets. I called my counsel and a forensic team, notified the carrier, and was told, don't stop it, document it. Catch them once and it's an accounting error. Let them do it 9 times and it's a pattern. The pattern is what makes it a crime instead of a mistake. 19 times. 19. I stopped it Tuesday, the same morning he emptied your account. We stood in a rented kitchen under a light fixture I had not chosen, and he made his offer. I have $700 million, Ms. Reyes. My attorneys tell me the cleanest route is to merge our positions, yours and mine. Marry me at the courthouse tomorrow, and their 2 thefts become 1 conspiracy against 1 household. I closed the folder. 4 seconds. I counted them. You're married. I'm married. In this state that has a name, bigamy, it's a felony. The certificate would be void, and Grant's defense attorney would use it to argue we're 2 conspirators, not 2 victims. I slid the folder back toward him. You just tried to hand him his only way out. Everett Lang did not move for a long moment. I took the pen off my counter, turned over the top page, and wrote 11 characters on the back of it. 18 U.S.C. 1964 C. We don't marry, we sue together. Private victims can bring a civil RICO claim and collect triple damages. 2.4 million times 3 is 7.2, plus fees, plus joint and several liability. Meaning Grant alone can be made to pay all of it. And because it arises from fraud, bankruptcy can't discharge it. I put the pen down. You don't need a wife, Mr. Lang. You need a forensic accountant. He looked at the 11 characters on the back of that page. I pay 40 attorneys, he said. Not one of them said that in 40 seconds. That night, I did not cry. I want to be careful about that, because people expect a scene there, and I do not have one to give them. What I have is a rented desk, a lamp with a bad shade, and a window facing a parking structure where a light flickered on a 9-second cycle. What I did was work. I laid the 2 drives side by side and started building the thing I have built 400 times for other people. A timeline, not a story, a timeline. Stories have motives in them, and motives are the last thing you should trust. A timeline only has dates, dollars, and who touched what. I worked until 3, and somewhere in there I stopped because I had reached the question. It is the question everyone eventually asks me. Strangers ask it kindly and then look away. So I asked it first, at a rented desk, with nobody there to soften the answer. How did you not see it? I went back through my own case logs. Last September, I flagged a corporate account for irregular transfers. That same week, Grant moved $11,000 out of our joint account. I saw it. I filed it in my head under, he's planning something for our anniversary. That wasn't incompetence. That was building a risk model for the entire world and excluding exactly one variable from it. There's a name for that. Every model has an assumption you never think to test. Mine was that he was on my side. I sat with that for a long time. Here is what nobody tells you about doing this work. Detection requires suspicion. Marriage requires its absence. I had been asked to do both in the same house for 8 years, and I had chosen the marriage every single time. And I would like to say I regret it, and I do not. Because the alternative is a woman who audits her husband, who checks the statements before she checks how his day went, who runs her own home like a claims file. That woman would have caught him in September. She also would not have had a marriage worth stealing. There was a Sunday in our 4th year when I had the flu, and he drove 2 towns over because I had said, half asleep, that I wanted the soup from the place with the yellow awning. He came back 90 minutes later with the wrong soup, so pleased with himself that I ate all of it. I have decided I am allowed to keep that. That man existed. He also emptied my account at 11:47 on a Monday night. Both are true, and the second one does not erase the first. I am not saying that to be forgiven. I am saying it because I meet people now who cannot get out of bed for the shame of having trusted someone. And I want them to hear a person who does this professionally say it plainly, you were not stupid. You were inside the one relationship where the tools do not work. Nobody is a stranger to their own kitchen. Then I opened my laptop again, and I added a column to the timeline that had not been there before, and I labeled it Verified Independently, and I left every row in it empty until I could fill it with something that did not come from a person who loved me. 3 weeks later, in a conference room, I was not in. 2 investigators sat across from Dale Brennan. I read the transcript afterward. It is 9 pages long, and I have read it perhaps 20 times. They did not raise their voices. They put one item on the table, a photocopy of his notary journal. This state requires a journal, and it requires a thumbprint from every signer. The thumbprint in the book for the 12th of February was not mine. One of them said, "Mr. Brennan, that's a felony. Up to 5 years. The transcript records 11 seconds of silence. Then Dale Brennan, 61 years old, who sold insurance out of a strip mall and played the back nine every other Saturday, asked exactly one question. Will I get to have dinner with my wife tonight? They told him it depended on the next few minutes. He talked for 19. He gave them the date, the room, the fact that Grant brought the pages already signed, and the amount he had been paid to press a seal into them. $50. That is the entire number. Grant built the rest of his life on top of it. The weakest link is never the worst person in the room. It's always the one who is paid the least. The signing was a Tuesday in May, 11th floor, a conference room with a view of the river. People ask whether I dressed down on purpose, whether the gray slacks and flat shoes were a performance of defeat. They weren't. I was tired. I had slept 4 hours a night for 9 weeks, and it was on my face, and I did nothing to hide it. Grant read exhaustion as surrender. That was his mistake to make, not mine to correct. The deal was simple on its surface, which is how the dangerous ones look. I would release my interest in the house. In exchange, Grant would assume the mortgage, all of it. The original note and the $400,000 he had pulled out in February. I thought he was taking my house. On paper, he was taking my house and my debt, and he wanted both, because in his head, the property was worth more than the paper attached to it. His attorney was a man named Alan Voss. Good suit, the kind of lawyer who bills for reading and then reads. Margaret had transmitted the draft to his office 8 days earlier. Nothing about it was hidden. It arrived with a cover letter listing the material terms, and page 14 was one of them. Voss went through it in the room anyway, page by page, the way careful men do. At page 14, he stopped. He put a finger on the paragraph and read it twice. Grant, he turned the document slightly so his client could see it. There's a springing recourse provision on page 14, a bad boy carve-out. Let me take this back for 2 days. Grant did not look at the page. He looked at his watch. Kendall's got the 20-week scan at 1. He put his hand out. Give me the pen. Grant, I'm advising you. Alan. A small laugh, the one he used on clients. It's a house. He signed the front. He initialed the bottom of every page, 14 included. His pen skating across the corner without slowing, and signed the back. It took under 90 seconds. Voss set his own pen down and looked across the table at me. I want to be honest about that half second, because it is the only part of this story I still turn over at night. I was asking, not out loud. He was a decent lawyer watching a client walk off a roof, and he looked at me the way you look at the only other adult in a room. I looked back at him with nothing on my face at all. I could have said one sentence. I have thought about which one. Something like your client should take the 2 days. It would have cost me the case. It might have cost him 7 years. I said nothing. I am not going to dress that up. Then I signed my own copy, which people forget. I gave away a house whose banister I had refinished myself over 2 weekends in August. It was mine and I let it go. And I did not feel noble about it. I felt like a woman selling her coat in winter. A bad boy carve-out is simple. The loan is secured by the property unless you lie. If you lie, the debt jumps off the building and lands on you. Personally, permanently. Grant had already lied. He had lied in February on a mortgage application with a stranger's thumbprint standing in for mine. From the moment his pen left that page, every false representation he had already made was no longer attached to a house he could walk away from. It was attached to him. He had been warned by his own attorney, in front of a witness, on the record, and he had waved it off because a sonogram was at 1 o'clock. Nobody tricked him. I need that understood. He was handed 2 days and he traded them for a parking space. 6 weeks later, he and Kendall bought a house, $2.8 million, 6 bedrooms, a stone terrace, in the kind of neighborhood where the streets have no sidewalks. They paid cash my $400,000 and what was left of Everett's $2.4, and they bought it through a shell entity registered in Delaware. I bought it through a Delaware shell because he thought that made him invisible. What he didn't know, all cash purchases through legal entities, in certain markets, above a certain threshold, trigger a mandatory beneficial ownership report to the Treasury. In order to hide his name, he had to write his name on a federal form and mail it in. He turned himself in through the act of hiding. The campaign started in June. Diane posted the stone terrace. Diane posted the nursery, painted a color she called Quiet Sage. Diane posted a caption about finally having a daughter-in-law who understood what a family was for. Bethany went further. Bethany tagged me. Every post, the maternity photos, the imported crib, Grant with his hand on Kendall's stomach in front of a car he had owned for 9 days. My name attached to each one so my phone would light up and I would know, immediately and repeatedly, that I had been replaced and that the replacement was expensive. I never replied, not once, not to any of it. I screenshotted all of it, time-stamped, archived, filed, 61 posts in 11 weeks. And every one of them was a photograph of stolen property taken by the people holding it. The invitation came in August, heavy cream cardstock, gold foil, an engagement party at a country club with a valet stand. Tucked inside was a smaller card in Diane's looping handwriting. Blue ink, 1 line. Thought you'd like to see what a real family looks like? I read it twice and I felt nothing I could name. Then I checked the date against a calendar Margaret and I had been keeping for 4 months. And I sat down. Here is the part I was not there for. I have it from Desmond, and later, much later, from Bethany herself, in a diner, over a coffee. Neither of us drank. 3 days before that invitation went out, Desmond came home and put a copy of the file on their kitchen table. "I'm filing this," he said. "I'm telling you first, not so you can stop me, but so you get to decide which side you're standing on when it goes off." Bethany looked at it for a while, then she pushed it back across the table. "He's my brother," Desmond didn't argue. He picked up the folder and put it in his bag, and they ate dinner, and neither of them said anything else about it. She washed the dishes, he dried. Neither of them slept much that week. 3 days later, she drove over to Grant's new house to collect the party decorations out of his office. The boxes were under the desk. She had to open the drawer to find the key to the storage room, and that is the only reason she opened it at all. On top, a printed itinerary. 2 one-way tickets to a country I will not name here. A country whose relevant feature is that we have no extradition treaty with it. Departure Sunday, 6:40 in the morning. The party was Friday. 2 passengers, Grant, Kendall. Underneath that, an assignment of lease for Kendall's old apartment, already signed by Grant, with the transferee line left blank. He had been liquidating quietly for a month, everything that could be turned into cash, and nothing that could not be carried onto a plane. Bethany stood in her brother's office for 4 minutes. She has told me what was in those 4 minutes, and I am going to repeat it the way she said it. She thought about the baby, due in November. No passport, no papers, no vote, and a father who had booked a departure for 40 hours after his own engagement party. She thought about her parents. Warren had guaranteed Grant's $400,000 line of credit and pledged their house against it. And Bethany understood, standing there, that the house was already gone. It had been gone since February. Whether she made a phone call or not, her mother was going to lose that kitchen. That was the thing that broke it. Not conscience, exactly. Arithmetic. There was nothing left to protect. There was only the question of what she wanted to have done. There was a photograph on the corner of Grant's desk, one of the frames she had boxed up in my living room in March and carried to his house herself. She turned it face down. It was the second time. Then she went out to her car and called her husband. "He's not taking them anywhere. He's taking himself. There are 2 tickets and there are 3 people." Desmond had it in front of Everett's counsel within the hour. I want to be precise about what that changed, because it is the whole hinge of this story. Federal fraud cases move slowly. They move in months. Nobody kicks a door for a man with a mortgage and a mailing address. But a documented itinerary to a non-extradition country, 40 hours out, is not a fraud timeline anymore. It is a flight risk, and flight risk is the one word that makes a slow machine move on a Friday night. My plan for that Friday was quiet. A process server in a plain jacket. A civil complaint, 14 minutes, no raised voices, and a drive home. That was the design, and I had rehearsed it the way I rehearse everything. At 7:20, my phone buzzed in the car. Desmond, 4 words. Flight risk, it's tonight. I read it twice, looked out at a valet stand and a line of German sedans, and understood that I had lost control of my own story 40 minutes before it started. We walked in at 8. I want to describe what happens to a room, because I had never seen it before and I have never seen it since. It does not go quiet all at once. It goes quiet in a wave, from the doors inward, one conversation at a time, like something spilling. Kendall saw Everett first. I watched a woman recalculate 11 years of her life in about 2 seconds. She had left a mid-level operations manager. Standing in the doorway of her own engagement party was a man 300 people in that room had been trying to get a meeting with for a decade, and she could read it on their faces before she could read it on his. Her glass did not fall. She set it down, very carefully, on the edge of a table. Diane came across the floor fast. "You have no business here. Security." I lifted the envelope so she could see it, and I did not say anything. I did not go to the stage. There was a stage and a microphone, and I wanted on the record that I never touched it. This was not a speech. It was a filing. The server was already moving. I was a heavy-set man in his 50s named Ray. He said, "Grant Holloway," and Grant said, "Yes," the way people do, out of habit. And Ray put the complaint in his hand. Long and Reyes v. Holloway et al. Civil RICO, $7.2 million. Warren got to it before Grant did. And I watched him read the caption, and I watched him find his own name in the caption. And I watched him understand that a guarantee is not a favor. He turned and walked to the bar, and he handed the club his card to close out the evening. Because that is what he had come to do. It was declined. He gave them a second card, declined, a third. The manager came over. He was perhaps 35, in a gray suit, and extraordinarily polite, which made it worse. He did not lower his voice enough. "Mr. Holloway, I'm sorry. We'll need to suspend service." The quartet stopped mid-phrase. Two servers began collecting glasses off the tables of people still holding them, near the coat check. A woman in green touched her husband's elbow, and they left. And once two people leave a room like that, 40 follow. Then red and blue came through the windows and swept across the ceiling. I had planned something surgical. What arrived was a spectacle. Federal agents don't take a man out of a ballroom on a Friday night unless he's about to run, and Grant was about to run. 2 tickets, 3 people. That is the only reason there were sirens instead of a scheduled surrender on a Tuesday morning. I want to be honest about something. I did not feel triumphant. I watched a pregnant woman slide down a wall in a $4,000 dress, and I felt the room go cold in a way I had not calculated for. They cuffed him beside the ice sculpture. Kendall was screaming that he had tricked her, that she had signed things she never read, that she was a victim. Grant, over his shoulder, was already saying her name to the agents. 9 seconds, I counted, 9 seconds from the handcuffs to 2 people trying to sell each other. Then he saw me, and everything in his face collapsed into something that wanted to be love. Nora, please, tell them it's a divorce. Tell them it's a house. I walked over. I did not raise my voice. There was no need. The room was silent, and the acoustics were excellent. You asked me once why I count things. This is why. Someone has to know exactly what was taken, or it just becomes a story people argue about. That was the whole speech I had spent 5 months not giving. They took him out through the flower arch he had paid for with Everett's money, behind me. Diane had gone down onto the marble in her sequins. She reached up towards Susan Whitlock, who she had played doubles with every Thursday for 19 years. Susan stepped back, not a way back, 1 step, so that the hem of her dress would not touch Diane's fingers. Then she said, to no one, "I think we're going," and went to find her coat. Nobody helped Diane up. Bethany crossed the floor. She walked past her mother on the ground, and she did not stop. And she went and stood next to her husband. Diane's voice came up off the marble, like something torn. "What did you do?" "I made a phone call. Mom, there were 2 tickets. There was going to be a baby with nobody left." Grant was sentenced the following spring. 6 years and 4 months, plus the 24 that run consecutive and cannot be reduced. Because aggravated identity theft carries a mandatory term no judge is allowed to touch. Kendall took a plea, probation, and she testified, and she was good at it. Warren and Diane lost the house through 11 months of foreclosure. Not a raid, not a seizure, notices, certified letters, a slow machine that cannot be shouted at. I heard later that Diane stopped shopping on the north side because the cashiers there had watched her for 20 years. Desmond received a federal whistleblower award. It was lawful, it was substantial, and he never once pretended otherwise. I won on a Friday at 9:40. By 11, I was still refreshing the court docket. Then I understood something. For 7 months, I had thought about Grant every single day, more than in the entire last year we were married. I moved him out of my house and moved him into my head. I closed the laptop. It was the hardest thing in the whole plan. Then, I walked around a neighborhood I did not know until midnight, and slept 9 hours for the first time since March. 4 months after sentencing, I opened an education trust. The beneficiary is a boy born in November. His mother is on federal probation, and his father is in a federal facility. It was set up anonymously through a law office. It pays out when he's 18, and my name appears nowhere in it. I didn't do it because I'm good. I did it because I spent 7 months calculating precisely who deserved to lose what. And in that entire spreadsheet, there was exactly one name that had done nothing wrong. I took revenge on the adults. I don't take revenge on a child who never got to choose his parents. He will be told at 18. Only that someone who knew his family wanted him to start from 0 instead of from below it. Bethany's family cut her off completely. Diane has not spoken to her since the ballroom floor. She lost an inheritance that had stopped existing in February, which is the cheapest kind of loss and hurt her anyway. She and Desmond stayed together. They still are, which is not a small sentence. We had coffee in a diner the following year, the one I mentioned. She turned her cup around twice and asked me whether I would ever forgive her. I could have lied. I have become very good at saying reassuring thing. I don't know yet, but you're the only person in that family who ever paid a price for doing the right thing, and I'm not going to pretend that costs nothing. She never found out who set up the trust for her nephew. She never will. If you're listening to this and you share money with someone, 3 things. Not as a victim, as someone who does this for a living. 1, ask your bank for dual authorization. It takes 10 minutes and can save you 18 months. 2, keep one account in your name only, at a different institution. Not because you distrust them, because every good model has a fallback. 3, if your name is on the deed. Nobody can put you out of your home in 48 hours. Nobody. And if someone tells you they can, the way they lie is how you know they planned it. 2 years later, Everett asked me a question at the same table, in the same room. This time there was no folder on it. I asked what the terms were. He said there weren't any. I told him I'd need to think about it. He said, take all the time you want, and then he waited 11 months, and never asked again, and never left. We married on a Tuesday morning with 6 people present. Margaret, my sister, Desmond, Bethany, and 2 clerks who do it for a living. No prenup, no attorneys, no exhibits. This time, we didn't sign anything at all.